Hey everyone, today I'm just showing off my custom monster generator for D&D 5th edition. I use this for homebrewing monsters and tweaking vanilla monsters to much more appropriate challenge ratings for my party. This was really my first experience coding, so it's likely still quite buggy and it needs playtesting, but it's been a lot of fun to create. Before I show off how it works, just a huge shout to Valloric, as I'm piggybacking off his HTML stat block format. That's what this is. This is Valoric's format, and I just think it makes a much more genuine looking stat block. It's a big shout out to him. Basically what the generator does is it generates stat totals, modifiers and attack damage. It's got some basic functionality for weapon and spell attacks, but it also has a section which you can add custom abilities and attacks. So if we just go through, you obviously have your monster name, your monster size. So your monster size is actually important because it determines the amount of health you get per dice when you're rolling for monster health. The monster type, so all the different types you can choose from. The alignment, some of this stuff is really just for taste. It doesn't have that much input in the generator, but it does pop up when you do the final format. The challenge rating is actually the backbone of the generator. I understand a lot of people don't actually like CR, but it's a useful tool used to create a reasonably balanced generator. So I compared the total stats and the challenge rating of a bunch of monsters from the D&D 5th edition SRD, and I made a curve based on this relationship. So what this generator does is it uses the curve I made to divide up the stats based on your inputs over here. So you can say which stats you want in which order. So if you want HP to be the highest, you can chuck HP up there, and then AC blah 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 blah. Finally, stat variability basically changes how extreme your stats are. A stat variability of 0 will make all of your stats identical, and a variability of 10 will cause huge extreme to occur. The abilities basically work as you'd expect, so you can input an ability here or here, and it will pop up the way you expect. If you don't put in anything, nothing will pop up in the final format. For the actions, you can choose between a generated attack and a custom action. So these are actually mutually exclusive, so depending on which one you have selected will change which one pops up in the final format. You can put in your name and then your to hit. You can actually make it guess your to hit based on your challenge rating. But nothing too out of the ordinary. Other mutually exclusive things, other than the tabs for the type of action you want to do, multi-attack and range. So usually you don't have ranged multi-attacks, so when you tick one the other gets unticked, and then spell attacks and multi-attacks. So when you tick one the other gets unticked. Other than that, once you could create monster, it outputs a fully formatted monster that you could print screen, screenshot, or just use on the fly. So one other thing that you could actually use this generator for, other than homebrewing, was tweaking monsters. So here I've inputted all the usual stats of a kobold. So I've got the name, the size, the type, alignment. Challenge rating has actually been inputted in a decimal. It will convert to a fraction once I format it in the final format, but the generator doesn't really cope if you put it in a fraction at the start. So it's better off as a decimal. Other things worth noting is in the sensors, you don't actually have to put the passive perception. It'll generate that as part of the final format. I've put in the abilities of the kobold and the attacks. So basically if we just create the monster, it'll generate it. So this is not perfect, definitely not perfect. The HP is quite high, the dex is a bit low, everything else is a bit more middling, but you could generate it a few more times if you wanted to get it a little bit closer. I don't think I'm going to have any luck. Anyway, so say you wanted your party of 5 4th level characters to fight a single kobold, and you want it to be a little more of a challenge than a single 1/8 challenge rating kobold. So what you could do is you could actually just tweak the challenge rating, change that to a 4 or a 5, and then you could click create monster again, and what it will do is it will change the challenge rating, which will subsequently change the AC, the HP, and all your other stats, as well as your attack damage, while keeping everything else largely the same. And say if you didn't like that, you could generate it again, and then generate it again, and then generate it again. So we've just managed to tweak a usually 1/8 challenge kobold up to a challenge 5 kobold. And you could do the inverse. You could take something like a Tarrasque, nice 30 challenge monster, and dial it all the way down to a challenge rating 1. You could do it if you wanted. Wouldn't be very appropriate, but you could do it. The last feature I haven't really touched on is these randomize buttons. So there's 3 different randomize buttons. You have randomize all, which will just input something in most of the fields, not the abilities and not the custom attacks, but certainly the generated attacks and the other stats. You have randomize all but CR. So if you put a challenge rating in, it will randomize everything except for the CR. And then you have randomize only the empty fields. So that will randomize everything you basically haven't filled in. The most useful of these is randomize all but CR. So say what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to quickly on the fly come up with a monster as if I was playing a game, as if I was DMing for a Dungeons and Dragons game. And say I needed my challenge rating to be 5. I could quickly go randomize. And suddenly I've got this monster. I've got a white burn. It's a medium plant. It's chaotic neutral. And straight away I could start tweaking it. So I could say, oh, this has got a speed of 100 feet per turn. That's really high. I could dial that back down to 0. Saving throws, sure, I could keep that. I could say languages it knows, it doesn't know any languages, it's a plant. And then I could look at the damage vulnerabilities and I could say, oh, I don't really want to have any damage vulnerabilities or immunities. I could say maybe it's vulnerable to fire. And then I could say it's resistant to sleep or blinded. Or maybe immune, I should say. I could look at this and go, I could tweak this how I want, but that will be fine. The first generated attack is White Eruption. I might change that to... I could keep it as White Eruption, but I might change it to a Poison attack. And I'll say ranged is a bit much, so I'll make it 5 feet, but I'll make it a spell attack. And just change the red control. Might change that to ranged, and then just make it 30 to 120, and suddenly I've got myself a monster. So that's just something you could use it for, just generating a quick monster on the fly that you could use in your game of D&D on the spot. But other than that, that'll probably do it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you got a kick out of this. Bye.